Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing well. Welcome back to the video series, if I can call it. In this video, I will go over the labs for Computer Programming 1. Uh, I'll, I'll see how many labs I can record in this video, but I'm hoping to record for both Unit 1 and 2, but let's see. Anyway, so by now you should know that we use NetBeans for coding all the programming questions, and for submitting the questions for your labs, we use something called CodeRunner, which is available on Moodle. But if you're writing code on your own computer or on your own machine, you would use NetBeans for that. Alright, so I will start with Unit 1, Lab 1, and let's see how that goes. So the first question was a tutorial. You were supposed to read through a PDF that showed step-by-step instructions on how to create a project in NetBeans and how to solve the first question, but I'll just directly go into solving the question for you here. So basically what it required from you to do was that you create a project in Apache NetBeans. If you don't have this, you can go to Moodle and download using both the links in the resources section. If I can open this, in the resources you have both the links for JDK and NetBeans. You need to download both of them. You install JDK first and then you install NetBeans. Alright, and once you have it, you will be ready to work on your labs. So I will create the first project here. To create a project, you have to click on this icon, the second icon with the plus, and then you have to select Java with Ant, Java application, next. If you're doing it for the first time, like I am doing right now because I just installed the latest version of NetBeans, it will take some time. It is downloading the required stuff for you to be able to create a project. Once you have it, once the processing is done, you can name the project. Here, usually in the first text field, you give your project a name. So let's say I will name it Lab 1 Question 1, and then the next part is where you name your class. I mean, the last text field has your project name, dot, and then your main class, which you can rename. Alright, so I will leave it as it is now. I'm not sure if, I think we had to name it something else. We had to name it Simple Java Program according to the question in the PDF. But yeah, that's how you would do it. I'm just going through it very quickly right now because I'm sure we're like in week 4 now, so you should probably know all of this. So yeah, just follow along. And then once you're done, so you only do 2 changes. You do one here for the project name and one here for the main class name. You can even change the location of your project, but that's up to you. That is not requirement of the program. The only 2 requirements are the project name and the class name, which is the second name here after the dot. Anyway, when you name a class here, make sure there are no spaces. Okay, if you put a space, and even in the project, I think if you try to put a space, it will give you an error. So just keep everything without spaces. So after that, you will click on Finish. Okay, and then you have your project ready. Okay. Now, if you notice here, you have, we've discussed this in class, but to create a program, you need 2 things. Actually, you need 3 things, but 2 things are required. If you don't have them, your program will not run. The first one is a class, which is, we call it public class, and the name that you give to your class. And then you have a starting bracket and an ending bracket. Alright, that's the class. Every program needs to have a class. Alright, and similarly, every program needs to have a main method. Main method is where your execution or your program starts running. It's basically like the driver, right? So if you don't have the main method, your program will not run, it will not show any results. So everything should go within the main method. Again, you need to memorize how we write this. It's basically public static void main string, two square brackets which basically signify array. We don't want to get into that. And then args. Your code should always go here. If you notice here, there's a starting bracket and an ending bracket for the main method as well. Your code should go between the main method within the brackets. Okay, if you write your code here, it's wrong. If you write your code here, it's wrong. Okay, you don't do that. That's not where you write your code. Your code would go within the inner brackets. So this is where I would type my code. Now, according to the question, I just needed to print out hello world, I think. So for that, you can write system dot out, S is capital, dot print ln, and then anything that you need to print as it is to the screen, you will put it within quotations. All right, so system dot out dot println, two brackets, and then double quotations, and here whatever I will write will be printed to the screen for the user. All right, so if I run this now, it prints for me hello world. There's a shortcut for writing this system.out.print part. You can, I will show it to you again. You can just write SOUT and press the tab key, and then it writes the whole thing for you. But anyway, it's good to know both ways of writing it. So that's the first question. All right, now if you notice here at the top, that's your file, right? That's the file in which I'm typing my code. If the name of the file is bold, that means it's not saved. And to save it, you can press Control S or Command S depending on what operating system you're using. But once it is saved, it changes. It's not in bold anymore. All right, here you can view all your files on the left side. It's organized in a specific way, but just know that all your files in which you are going to write your code will have .java extension at the end. All right, now the actual thing is that you need to copy this code and you need to put it in CodeRunner, which is your actual lab. When you copy this code, you do not copy this line, package line. You do not have to copy the package line. If you copy the package line along with your code and put it in CodeRunner, it will not work. It will give you an error. I will show the error to you so it becomes more clear. You start copying from the beginning until the end, until the last bracket. Some of you are copying until this bracket and you forget to take the last one. I recommend that you start from the beginning until the end, but I'll show you with package right now. So the whole thing, copy it and then paste it here. All right, now if I run this, if I click on pre-check, it's going to give me an error, could not find or load main class simple Java program. So it couldn't find the class simple Java program, although I have given it a class that's called simple Java program. But if I get rid of the package line, the same code will work. Okay, so the moral of the story is that you do not copy the package line when you're copying your code from NetBeans. All right, now once you're done with pre-check, you need to click on check to see if it's actually correct, and it is correct, and based on that you get your marks. All right, so okay, that's the first question. The second question, it says create a NetBeans project called lab1 ex2 with the main class called simple Java program, and then copy and paste the following program code and compile and run and see the code. All right, so for that I will go back, I will close this here, and then I will create another project, Java with Ant, Java application, and then name of the name of the project is lab1ex2. lab1ex2. Is there a space? Okay. And then the name of the class, what did they say? With the main class called Simple Java Program. I just recommend, please just copy, if there are things that are mentioned in your question that you need to write as it is, just copy them instead of typing them, because most of you are making spelling mistakes and all of that. So anyway, so to rename the class, main class, you click on the second word in the last text field and you just paste according to whatever it is required to be named, and then you click on finish. Okay, now what they want you to do is copy and paste the following Java program code. This is the code. You need to copy and paste this in NetBeans. So I will go back. Again, we need the package line in NetBeans, but we don't want it in CodeRunner. So here, if you remove package line, it will cause an error. Keep the package line, change everything else. I will remove everything else and then I will paste according to what was on Moodle in the question. Okay, compile and run the code to see what happens. And then okay, so let's compile. How do you compile? Basically you run. All right, so you can even build it, but for now just run the project. So 1 second, you can build the project here and it will give you if there are any errors or any of that. But here, if you click on run the project, it will give you the results. Notice how everything is written between the two curly brackets of the main method. That's where your code goes. Again, you don't write your code outside any of those brackets. All right, so if you run this program, it says, it gives you an output, my first Java program, which is coming from this line, my first Java program. And then the sum of 2 and 3 is 5, which is from here. The sum of 2 and 3 is 5. Now this part is being printed as it is. All right, this part is being printed as it is on the screen. The plus 5, when you write plus here, what it does is it joins 5 with this text, meaning that it will print this, and then after this part it will print 5. All right, so this is called concatenation, meaning it is joining your text with something else. So here in this case it's joining the text with a number 5. So at the end it will print the sum of 2 and 3 is 5. And then the last one is 7 plus 8 is 15. So this part here, it's printing again 7 plus 8 is equal to, it is printing that as it is, but then it's joining 7 plus 8. Now this 7 plus 8 is basically addition. Okay, so 7 plus 8, it will calculate that as 15, and then it will print the result. All right, so again, if you notice, the calculation is put within 2 round brackets to signify that this is not concatenation or this is not joining, it is addition. All right, so if you want to do any addition along with the print statement, you have to put it in brackets, whether it's addition, multiplication, subtraction, division, whatever it is. Any calculation you want to do, you have to put it in round brackets, and then this plus is just to join the two results together, or the two text or numbers together. All right, so that is what is happening here. All right, now if we move on, it says modify the program to do the following: display the text my second Java program. Again, all of the result here mentioned here is what you need to achieve towards the end. Finally, your program should be able to do whatever is mentioned in the result here. All right, so here I will copy again. I don't need to copy it, but okay, let's just copy it. So the first sentence should give you my second Java program. So if I go back here, instead of my first Java program, replace it with my second Java program. Okay, the second is the sum of 17 and 8 is 25. So if I go back, we had the sum of 2 and 3 is 5, but now it is the sum of 17 and 8. Okay, so 17, you change 2 to 17, 3 to 8 is 25. So if we go back, you can just write 25 here. Okay, and finally 32 plus 16 is equal to 48. If we go back here, we had 7 plus 8, right? So 32 plus, that will change to 32 plus 16. Now here you were adding those two numbers that were mentioned here, right? So that will change to 32 plus 16. Okay, now if I run this, I think it's giving me the same result that is required, my second Java program. Then the sum of 17 and 8 is 25, 32 plus 16 is 48. Okay, now I will copy and paste your code from NetBeans in the text in the below box. Click check to evaluate your results. So again, now I want to copy this code. So again, I'm not going to take the package line because it's only required for NetBeans. I will take everything after that until the end, copy that and paste it here, and then click on pre-check if you want to check it before, and then finally check. Okay, all right, that's the second question. Now for the third question, it says create an NetBeans project called lab1q3 and with a main class called example1. Okay, so I will go back, close this because I don't need it, and then here Java with Ant Java application, name it lab1q3, and the name of this was example1. Okay, finish that, and I have this here. Go back, copy and paste the code below and try compiling it. Again, all of this code you will copy it. You will keep the main, you will keep the package line there, and after that remove everything else and just paste your code. Okay, then it says okay, now you try to run this and see what errors you get. All right, so already I have these red underlines which tell me that there are some errors that need to be fixed. All right, now the first one is obviously the name of the class. We've looked at it in our classes before, that the name of the class, the name of the method, the name of anything basically in your program, if you name anything, whether it's a variable, whether it's an object, whether it's a method, whether it's a class, it cannot have any spaces, and it cannot start with a number as well. Okay, in this case the class name example1, it has a space here. We don't, that's why it's giving you the error. So if you remove that space, that error is gone. Okay, the second one is here. Now we said in class that Java is case sensitive, right? That means if you write capital S versus small s, Java considers them differently. All right, so if in the code system, the S for system is capital, it has to always be capital. All right, so that's the second one. And then every statement that you write in your code should end with a semicolon. All right, if you don't put the semicolon, it will give you errors, and a semicolon is more like a full stop. Just like how in English you have full stop to every sentence that you have, in programming every instruction ends with a semicolon. Now I know this is difficult to look at or to spot, but these quotation marks are wrong. And one way to guess that, or one way to figure that out, is because the text here is black. If these were the correct quotations, then the text within them will be green in color, right? But right now it's black. That's why the quotations are wrong. So you remove those quotations and you put the actual double quotes and see how they change to green in color. Now it's correct. If it's not green, that means it's wrong. All right, now everything is visibly correct. All right, and but it's spaced very differently, very weirdly, right? So you can I think format your text. I think it's here, view, there is an option. Okay, source format. If you press on that, it formats your code, but I don't know. Okay, I think you have to select the whole thing. If you select the whole thing, source format, yeah, it formats it for you correctly. All right, save that and try to run it. See if it runs. See what it says. Your project class wasn't found in the project. Basically, it's saying that there was no main class. There is no driver in your project. As in there is no main method. But we have a main method here. But the problem is the M is capital. Here you need to make the M small. So the way it's written here should be exactly followed the same way. Okay. If you just put like a capital M, it doesn't work. Okay. But it doesn't give you the error, but when you try to run it, it tells you there is no driver, there is nothing we can run. What are you trying to run, right? So if you change that to small m, hi there is printed correctly. Okay, so that's what you were supposed to do. You were supposed to figure out the errors, and you were supposed to write them down and then copy them and paste them here in CodeRunner. Basically, what you can, how can you write what were the errors? You can just put a single comment. You can say here the class name had a space, which is wrong. Then here main, the M in main method was capital, was not capital, uppercase. I think that's better. And then here you had a few errors. You had S, the S in system was small or lowercase. Then the second one was the double quotes were wrong. We can say wrong double quotes were used, something like that. Wrong double quotes were used. Semicolon was missing. Okay. And then you copy it. Again, don't copy the package, copy everything else and paste it here. Okay, and then you can click on check or pre-check, whatever, and it should be fine. Okay, now for the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and then 8th. I'll show you the 7th, but everything else, it's up to you. You have to figure it out from the slides, but I'll show you question 7. Here they have given you a piece of code and they're saying figure out where these are in your code. All right, so for example, it says the line that includes the name of the class. The name of the class is right next to the keyword class. So obviously this is the name of the class and it's on line 1. So line 1 is the correct answer here. The line which marks the start of the body of the class. Like we said, starting in the class, I've mentioned this. Starting is your program. Actually, any start is basically the curly brackets. Any end is basically the closing curly brackets. So opening curly brackets are considered the start of whatever. We're looking for the start of a class. So obviously it's right after when you mention the class, which is here. So this one is considered as the starting of the class, start of the body of the class. So 2. the line which marks the start of the body of the main method. So main method is here, so the opening curly bracket right after that is considered the start of the main method. So that's 4. And then the line that includes a method in the class, which is this one, we say that this is the main method, as we've discussed in class. So this line has the method in class welcome, and then the line that includes the command used to display something onto the screen, this we said is the command that we used for displaying text or whatever you want on the screen. So this is line 5. Okay, I think that's it for lab 1. Again, the rest of the questions here, you need to figure them out on your own from the slides or from your whatever you understood from the class. I will just be showing you how to do the programming questions. All right, so this is done. I'm done with lab 1. Let's go back to lab 2A, I think. Okay, lab 2A. Okay, here the first question says, create a new project in NetBeans called lab 2A Q2 with the main class called addition. Okay, so go back to NetBeans, save this, close it, new project, new Java with Ant. What is the name of the, again, there's a typo here. It should be lab 2AQ question 1 because this is question 1, but I'll just name it the same way to just use it like that. And the main class should be called addition. So the project is called this and the main class is called addition. Finish. Okay, now replace the code in addition.java file with the code that is available below in the code runner question. So copy all of this and paste it here. Again, we need the package, so keep that, but everything else replace it with the code that is from code runner. The code asks the user to enter 2 numbers. The program waits until the user press enter and add the 2 numbers and displayed the sum on the screen in the console. Read the code carefully, build and run the program in NetBeans. Your task is to complete comments 1 to 6. Explain what the program does. No code needs to be changed, just the comments. Try to understand how CodeRunner automatically sends the user input when the program runs. Okay, so let's go back and see how this is supposed to be done. Okay, here all of this is given to you. Okay, the code is given to you. There is something new here which is called import java.util.scanner. You should be familiar with this right now. All this part or all this line is trying to do, actually, you know, before this, let's try to run this. So if you run this program here, see, it prints for you enter first integer, which is coming from this part, enter first integer, right? Here integer means a whole number, you don't put any decimals to it. So let's say 78, the second integer, again it's asking for me. See, here it's printing enter second integer, but then it's not doing anything else. It's not printing sum, it's not doing anything else. It's waiting for me to give the number to the console, which means here at this part it's waiting for my input. Once I put a number and I press enter, then it resumes the program. All right, right now it's at pause. It's waiting for me to give the input. So here, if I give another number, which is really big, finally, once I press enter, it prints the last thing for me, which is the sum, which is nothing but the sum of these 2 numbers. If I run it with a smaller number, you will notice the difference. So 1 plus 2 is 3. So finally, the program is printing the sum for me. But your job here is to figure out what these whatever the comments have numbers. So for example, here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You need to figure out what these lines of code are doing. So this one here, we said this line is getting the scanner class from the library. We've said this before, that the library is nothing but code that is written by someone else, and you're just using it in your program. You're just adding it in your program, just like a normal library where you can find all these books that are written by other people, but you can take them and you can use them to get information, right? Similarly, in programming, we have something called library, which stores code that is written by someone else. You can go and take that and add it to your program and use it however you want to, according to whatever is the correct way. Here, scanner is nothing but a class. Just like how we create classes, public class addition, scanner is also a class. How can I see that? I mean, this is not necessary, but it's good to know what is happening on the back. If you want to look at a specific class, let's say, you can press Control and then see it the names become clickable. So if I click on this, it opens a file which is public class scanner. Now this is again code that is written by someone else, but you're allowed to use it once you import it in your program. So I just wanted you to see this. It is just like a normal class that we create, but this class is written by someone else. And maybe we can even find the author, I think. I don't think so. Okay, I thought maybe there's a comment for author. Anyway, so scanner is nothing but a class from the library. What does this class allow you to do? It allows you to read input from the user and write back to a screen or a file. All right, for now we'll just focus on reading input from the user, or you can say it's used for input output. Okay, so imports scanner class from library for input, or for taking input from user. So that's done. Once you import, you need to create a scanner to actually start reading from the user. All right, so scanner input is equal to new scanner system.in basically creates a scanner for you, gives it a name, input, and then system.in means that you're using it for input. All right, you need to mention what are you using it for, because it can work for input and output, right? So if you mention system.in, that means you're taking it for input, you're using it for input, and then if you use system.out, it will specify that it's using for output. All right, but this part is important, scanner input. So just like you create a variable, you say int number or double number or whatever, you always give it a name, right? Similarly, scanner, when you create a scanner, you also need to give it a name, and this is the name that you're going to use everywhere else. All right, on this line we're creating a number, an integer variable to store the first number that you're getting from the user. Okay, so here create, actually this part is not called creating, it's called declaring. When you just declare, when you mention the data type and the name of the variable, you're just declaring it. So declare integer variable number 1 to store the first input. Similarly, declare integer variable number 2 to store the second input. And finally, declare integer variable sum to store the sum of the two inputs. Okay, so that's done. Now after that, you're actually printing enter first integer. This part is just printed to the screen, so the user knows what to do. All right, this is basically called a prompt. Okay, a prompt is nothing but the text that you're displaying to the user, specifying the information you need from them. Then you have something called input. We said that is called the scanner. That is a scanner object. So input dot next int. Next int will give you an integer number, will read an integer number from the user. It will only allow the user to enter integer numbers. All right, why are we using next int? Because number one is of type int, right? So number one is equal to input dot next int. You take the integer number and you store it in number one. Then system.out.println, which is again you're printing the next prompt to get the second number from the user. Again here input dot next int is waiting for the user to enter a number and then press on the enter key. Once that is done, the number that the user gave you will be stored in the variable number 2. Finally, you calculate, you do the math, right? You say sum should store number 1 plus number 2, which are nothing but the values the user gave you. So this is calculate the sum using the 2 input values. All right, and then finally you print the sum out and you join the text with the actual value of sum. So basically print the value of sum. Okay, that is what is done here. So again, if you run it, we didn't do any changes in the code, but here this is how it works. It waits for it prints the first prompt and then waits for the user to enter the value, prints the second prompt and then waits, and then finally displays the result. Now I need to put this back in. Again, when I copy it, I do not copy the package line. I copy everything else and I paste it in Code Runner and click on check. Okay, perfect. Now for the second question, it says create a new project in NetBeans called Lab2AEX2 with a main class called subtraction. So I will close this here, plus lab2, and this is called sub. Again, I will not write it as it is. I will just copy the word subtraction, finish, and then okay, need to close this. Okay, so that is done. Now it says copy the code from the main method of addition.java and make a slight variation of the program so your program subtracts the numbers instead of adding them. So if I go back here and I open the addition file, I can so the class is already created, I just need the main method, right? So I will copy again. Actually the main method is also there. Whatever is within the brackets of the main method, I will take that, I will copy that, and I will put it within the main method. Okay, now it's giving me an error, but we'll fix that. Oh, it's fixed. The only error was that scanner needed to be imported, and when I just pressed OK, it added it automatically. All right, so here I've copied it, and now you need to change the program so that it works for subtraction instead of addition. All right, so if I go back here, I have scanner. I need the scanner to read the numbers from the user. I need number 1, I need number 2, but I don't need sum here. It should be subtraction, right? So difference should be the name of the variable. So now one thing I can do is I can manually change it in all places from sum to difference. But here the smarter way would be to right click on the word sum, refactor, and then rename. Okay, and then it's wherever, and okay, instead of the word that is highlighted here, you change it to difference. It was sum, it was called sum, but I want it to be called difference now, and I want anywhere in the comments where there's the word sum, I need it to be replaced with difference also. Okay, now what is going to happen is if I click on refactor, anywhere it found it, anywhere in the program where there was a word sum, whether that was in code or in comments, will be changed to difference. So here it's difference, 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 and then in the comment also it was sum here, but now it's difference. All right, so that is done. Enter first. Okay, after that, enter first integer. That's the same, we don't need to change that. Enter second integer, that's also same, we don't need to change that. Difference is equal to number 1 minus number 2, because now we are subtracting. And then finally, this should be difference is difference. Okay, if I run this and I put, let's say, 10 and 5, it should give me 5. Okay, that is the only difference. We just changed the name of the variable, we changed the calculation, and we changed any print statement. That was it. All right, now if I want to copy again, I skip the package line and I copy everything else and put it in here for subtraction. Okay, and then check. Okay, that's correct. So that's question 2. Now question 3, create a new project in NetBeans called Lab2AEX3, call it addition 3 numbers. Okay, so here I will close everything, new project, Java with and, oh no, okay, it's okay. I forgot to change the name of the main class, and that's okay. Sometimes you make that mistake as well. We'll learn how to fix it. Here in the class, you have the name of the class, right? Just like how we refactored the name of the variable, you can even refactor the name of the class. So right click on it, refactor, rename, change it to addition 3 numbers. I think that's what it was called. Addition, I'll just copy it. Addition 3 numbers, refactor, and see, it changed the name of the class, it changed the name of the file, and everywhere else. All right, so that is done. Now what you need to do is copy the code from the main method of addition.java and make a slight variation of the program so that your program can now add 3 numbers. Okay, so I'll just copy it from here because we had it here. Okay, go back to NetBeans and put it here. Okay, now it says scanner is missing. It cannot find scanner because we didn't import. So you can write import java.util.scanner. Okay, now you need to change this so that it runs for this input. Okay, this part input is basically the numbers that that code runner will use to test your code. So it will test for 4, 5, 6, and if it gets 15, then your program is running correctly. Okay, so this is basically the input and this is the result. So you need to get 3 numbers from the user. The first in one of the tests of CodeRunner, the first number will be 4, the second will be 5, and the third will be 6, and finally the sum should be printed for all 3. We have addition working for 2 of them, for 2 input, right? So we need to make it work for 3 inputs now. So you had 2 variables to store the 2 numbers. Now you need a third variable. So int number 3 will be your third variable, and then you can put a comment here as well, declaring a variable number 3 of type integer. Okay, and then here you're printing the prompt for the user, right? Enter first integer, enter second integer, and then after each prompt you're storing, you're reading is from this part, input.nextInt, and then you're storing, which is on the left side, you have the variable. So similarly here, after the second prompt, you will print for the user enter third integer, okay, and then you store it, number 3 equal to, and then you read and then store. Basically it starts working. Basically the equal operator does whatever is on the right first and then puts it in the left side. So dot next int. See, you have all these other variable, all these other types as well. You can use those as well. And then semicolon. So we have the third number now. All we need to do is we need to add it with the other two numbers, and that's it. So 4, 5, 6, if you run it with 4, 5, 6, it should give you 15. So now if I just copy this from after the package line and then paste all of this here, check. Okay, so that's working. Now these two questions, I'll show them to you so that you know how to solve these questions in the exam. What happens when you try to store something in a container that cannot hold it? For example, try storing 128 in a byte. You should know by now that byte is a data type. So for example, in this code, let's say here I have int number 1, right? So let's say I try to create another variable called of type byte called test, and I try to store 128 in it. This part, see, it gives you incompatible types because byte can only take up until 127 and minus 128, I think. So I think, let's see, minus 128, yeah, minus 128 works, but minus 129 will not work, and it ends at 127. So if you try to put 128, byte cannot allow that. So what is the kind of error you will get here? It says, if you hover over it, it says incompatible types. So this is the correct answer. Okay. And the last one is, what happens when you try to use a variable name that is a reserved word, meaning you try to create an integer called class. All right. So again, you can test this. I will remove this line. Again, when you're checking all of this, if you write any code in your source code, just remove it at the end. So if I try to create an integer variable, name it class is equal to 0 or any other number, it gives me the error, not a statement, semicolon, expected, identifier expected. Out of these three, I think this is the most correct one in this case. All right. A runtime error, like we said, is the error that crashes your program when you try to run it. We have another called syntax error, which means you broke rules of the programming language, and in that case your program will not even run. But in runtime error, your program runs, but it crashes when you run it. And then we have the third error, which is logical error, meaning your program runs, it gives the results, but the results are wrong, they're not correct. Okay, remember those three kinds of errors. So I think we're done with lab 2A as well. Now let's go to lab 2B. Preview. Okay, so here it says write an application that declares and initializes 3 integers, and these are the values, and prints their average. What happens if you're dividing by 3? What effect does changing the type of the average variable has? Okay, here you're supposed to create an application. They didn't say the project name, they didn't say the class name, so that's up to you. But here in the code you can see that the name of the class is AVE3ints. So I will just copy that name and I will name the project whatever I want it to be named. So again, close this, create new project, lab 2BQ1. The name of the class is this, finish. Okay, now they want you to declare and initialize 3 integers. Okay, so if I go back, 3 integers are with int. The data type is int, right? And then you have to give it a name. So num1, let's say this part is called declaring. Okay, so int num1, int num2, int num3. Num1, num2, num3. You can't, if you have used num1, you cannot use it again. It will give you an error. The names have to be unique. So you have 3 integer variables, you have declared them. This part is called declaring. And then again here in CodeRunner, they've given you the skeleton of the program, basically, where they've given you comments that you can follow to make it easy for you to code. So I'll just copy it here so you know how to follow them. Okay, and then this part I will just move it here. Okay, so declare 3 integer variables and a float average variable. So float average. Okay, the difference is float has decimal points and doesn't have decimal points. Now initialize the variables. Initialize means assign the value for the variable. In the question, they've given you the values, which are 5, 7, and 2. These are the values for all the integer variables. So here, I will make num1 equal to 7. I think the first one was 7. 5, 7, 2. 5, num2, 7, num3, 2. 5, 7, 2. Okay. Now calculate the average. The average is nothing but sum of all the numbers that you have divided by how many numbers you have. So you will add these numbers together and then you will divide it by how many numbers you have. I have 3 numbers, so in this case you will divide it by 3. So average is equal to num1 plus num2 plus num3 divided by 3. Okay, I will show you there is some error here. I will show you what that means. Okay, and then finally you print the result here to the user. So how do you print? This is what you need to print at the end. So you copy the whole thing from here and then you print it using system out print line. Okay, now here these numbers, you need to replace it with these values, because I can change these values anytime in my program, and so the values here should be changed accordingly, right? So here you will close the quotation, so this part gets printed, values of the 3 integers are, then you join with it num1. Okay, again you join the other side, so because this side is text, right? So you keep that in quotations. Just remember, if you're trying to join variables with text, what you need to do is, after the quotation you should have a plus, okay, and then before you start the quotation you should have a plus. Okay, so here num1, num2, num3. I will show you what is the difference between all of them, and finally here you need to print your average. So at the end, average. Okay, now if I run this, there is a problem in the calculation. Okay, it's giving me 12, but the actual number is 4.666665. Okay, here all of this, what is happening basically, it's following the precedence of operators. So from left to right, it checks if it can find first multiplication or division. It does that first, and then it does addition and subtraction. So meaning this part is calculated first, whatever the result is, it's finally added to the other 2 numbers. We don't want that, so we do the addition first. Okay, so we take the numbers, we add all of them, and then finally we divide it by 3. Okay, So if you run this, now it's 4.0. Now the problem here is it should be 4.66666, right? That is not happening because on the right side everything is an integer. All of these numbers, num1, num2, num3, they're integers, and 3 is also considered an integer. If you put f with it, you're making 3, you're changing the value, you're changing the data type of 3 to a float, and then here if one of the values, if one of the values or any side of the equation is a different, okay, how do I say this? Okay, if any one of the numbers in the equation is of a higher data type, the final answer will take that data type. So basically numbers here, num1, num2, and num3, they're integers, but 3 is a float, right? So the final answer will be of the type float, which means it will consider all the points, all the decimal points. All right, so that is done. But the problem is there, if you look at the print statement, there are no spaces between the numbers, right? So if you want to put the spaces here, you need to put them in double quotations. All right, so you open double quotations, you put a space, you close it. Now because I've closed the double quotations and there's a variable next to it, I need to put a plus sign. So just remember, anytime you want to put a quotation, you just, anytime you want to put a space, you just put plus, double quotations, space, end the quotations, and then plus again. So I will copy this and I will put it between number 1, number 2, and number 3. And then here, I don't need to add the space. I can just, I don't need to add this whole thing after number 3. What I can do is just before the word and, I can put a space. Okay, if you run this, it gives you the correct answer. So if I copy the whole thing from the class, avoid the package line, paste it here, check. Okay, it's working. All right, so that is how you will do the first question. For the second question, write an application. Project name should be this, class name should be 2 floats. So I will close this. And the class name is 2 floats. Two floats, finish. Okay, that declares and initializes 2 floating point numbers and prints the sum, difference, and product using variables and casting results to an int. So you need to create 2 float variables. They should have the values 5.5 and 7.8. So here I can say float, let's say num1 is equal to 5.5, and then the second one is num2 7.8. okay, now see, it's giving me an error, right? If you put a number, if you're writing a number in code for float, you need to put f at the end. Okay, if you don't do that, it will give you an error, just like how it was giving me the error. So that's float, that's declaring and initializing. Basically this part is declaring, okay, and this part is considered initializing. Okay, now you need to print the sum, difference, and product. Okay, so I can say, okay, you want to calculate the sum of these 2 numbers, the difference and the product. Okay, but the values you get at the end, they should be integer values, they should not have decimal points. Okay, so you need to create int sum, int difference, because at the end we need the result in integers. So that's why we're creating them as integers. Product. Okay, then you specify the calculation. So here I will specify num1 plus num2. Okay, But if you notice, it's giving me an error. It's saying incompatible data types because this number here is float. Both of these numbers are float, but on the left side you're saying keep it as int, so it's getting confused. What are you trying to do? It should, if you're saying that sum should be int, then everything on the right side should be of the data type integer. Okay, so what you can do here is you can cast all of them to int. Okay, but if you just add int like this, it will make only the first number integer. Okay, you can even do it this way. You can add it here as well, but the problem is the result. If I print the result, let's say system.out.println print sum, it will give you 12 as the sum, but in the question the sum is 13 because the numbers are being, what it's doing is it's taking 5.5 and it's changing it to int, meaning it's getting rid of 0.5 and it's only taking the number 5 plus 7, which again you're getting rid of the point. 5 plus 7 will give you 12, but if you add them as float, as decimal numbers, and then you change it as a integer, then the number is different. So here what you need to do is you need to take the whole thing as a calculation. Whatever number you get at the end, that you need to change it to an integer. Okay, similarly for difference, you will change the whole result to integer, and product is nothing but multiplication. Okay, so num1 times num2, and then you just print it according to this. Sum is, difference is, and then product is. I will copy them, and sum is, remove 13 and write sum. Then difference is, difference is remove this and write difference, and then finally product is, and then just add product. And then if you run this with the values that were there, 13 minus 2 and 42, which is the same in code runner, I will copy my code from after the package line and then paste it here. Check. Oh, you have to print these two as well. In the beginning you need to print your numbers are these. So system.out.println floats are num1 space num2 and then semicolon. Now if you check, it should be correct. Okay, now here I'll explain this because it's a little bit confusing. Here, if you do these calculations in NetBeans, so for example, if I print this, copy this here, and then print it here, let's say. If you print that, it's 11.7. What is happening? 11.7, 8.7 is the double. 3 is an integer. The bigger data type, I'm not saying the bigger number, the bigger data type is double. Double is bigger than int, right? So the final result will have the data, I forgot what I wanted to say. The final result will have the bigger data type. So even if this was, let's say 8 and this was 3.7, it will still have point because the bigger data type is double, and that is what is considered in the final result. The second one, this part, okay, if I run this in NetBeans here, what happens is, see, it calculates the number here because it's in brackets, right? So it does the calculation first, just like how we did it here. It does 8.7 plus 3 first, which is 11.7, and then it changes that 11.7 to integer, which is, it just removes the point. It makes it 11. Okay, so 11 will be the answer here, 11.7 is the answer here, and then this part, 23.0 divided by 14.0, if you run that here, because both of them are double, the final answer will be double, will have decimal points, right? So 1.666 whatever. All right, so that is the correct answer here. But if you change the same numbers to integer, it will get rid of the decimal part. So now it will just be 1 because both the numbers are integer. Then this part, here you have, in the brackets you have decimal numbers, all right, but outside you make it integer. So basically this will give you 1.6 something, but then the final result will be changed to int, so it will be 1. Okay, so this is 1, and then 14 divided by 23, but with decimal points, it will have the decimal, so 0.6086 whatever, because both of them have decimal. If either one also had decimal, the final answer will have decimal points. But then if you do the same numbers with, actually without zeros, without the decimal part, the final answer is 0. It is actually 0.6 whatever, but because both of the numbers are integers, the decimal part is removed. This one is the tricky one. What happens here is you don't have brackets for the calculation here, right? Oops. You don't have the brackets here for the calculation, right? Here what happens is the compiler, it says, okay, you have 14, and next to 14 you have the word double, right? So what the compiler does is it changes this to a double value. So basically it makes it, it changes 14 to 14.0, forcefully changes it to 14.0, and then divides 14.0 with 23, which is an integer. But in this case, we have one of the data types which is higher, which is the double data type, which is higher. In that case, the final result will have decimal points. Why? Because one of them is double. And then finally, this, so this part basically 0.6 whatever. This is 0.6. And then the final one, so here in the final one you have brackets surrounding the formula, right? So 14 divided by 23, you have brackets around it. So first the calculation will be done. In this case both of them are integers, so the final answer will be 0, but outside you have double, so that means the final thing will have decimal after it, meaning it will put .0 after the answer from this equation. So if you run this, the answer is 0.0. How? Because these are integers, the answer already was 0. And if you change a number to double, all it does is it adds .0 at the end. So the answer here is 0.0. Okay, finish attempt. Okay, so I think that's it for, yeah, I think those are the only labs that are there in unit 2, right? And in unit 3, I think I will do it in the next video. There are only 2 labs, but I will do it in the next video. Okay, So I think that's it. If you have any questions, let me know. Try to do these as many times as you possibly can. That's the only way you will become good at programming. You can't do it once and then expect yourself to remember how it was done. It is just like learning a language. You need to keep learning the words and keep using them so that you become used to them, or you understand how they're used basically. So yeah, that's it. All the very best, and see you in the next one.